Okay, so it is right on the dot of 10 a.m. and we want to be timely and respectful of our members' time and also our guest speaker who took time out of her schedule to start. First of all, I'm Trisha Brown. I'm one of the board members and one of the founding members of Pet for You, and I am also an instructor. So if you haven't seen me, you might see me at some point in a class filling in or I teach in the Rancho Mission Viejo class on Tuesdays and in the Walking in the Park class on Tuesday afternoons as well. I am just going to be facilitator. I just wanted to take a minute to say, first of all, this is going to be recorded so that we can archive it on our website. So if somebody hasn't been able to make it and have the option of watching it down the road, or if you would like to rewatch the recording, it will be on the website as well. So I just wanted to let you know that it is being recorded. And I wanted to take a minute to see if I can find where Terry's bio went, because I had it up and now it went away. Okay, Terry, for some reason, I can't have the slide up in your bio at the same time. For some reason, my computer is not letting me do that.
We do that
So,
to us all the time.
yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can pull up the bio real quickly. I would like to introduce our speaker who comes to us all the way from the East Coast. So thank you for taking in the middle of your day there. Terri Pease is her name, Dr. Pease. She has a PhD. She is a highly experienced professional in the social services and healthcare industries. She's dedicated her life to working with people who are facing highly stressful situations. Could Parkinson's put you in that position? Possibly, right? Her experience has taught her how to provide supportive and trauma-informed care to those who need it the most. When Terri married her husband, who had Parkinson's disease, she brought her that wealth of knowledge and experience that she had to bear on caring for him. Okay, so she brought that wealth of knowledge and experience to work with her as she worked on caring for her husband. She's trained staff in organizations all around the United States on how to offer supportive, empathetic, and trauma-informed care. Her professional experience has informed her approach to caregiving and to encouraging other people that are caregiving for people with Parkinson's to make the idea of self-care real, practical, and possible. And I can just say from the few interactions that I've had with her, she's fabulous. And I'm very excited to welcome her. So we want to thank her for coming all this way. And Terri, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Trish. And I wish I were there. I'm sure it's warmer where you are than I am. I'm up here in the state of Maine, and our snow is just melting now. And we should be seeing our first crocuses any minute. So that's
Okay, so I
neat.
just want to put the slide up so everyone knows that they're here to see Terri Pease, but Terry's going to speak, so I'm going to remove this slide now so that we can see her full screen. Let's see here.
Hello, California, and wherever people are listening. And I'm so happy. Trish, thank you so much for that introduction and for kind of orienting people about who we are. I'm here to talk about something that often doesn't get addressed in the world of Parkinson's, which is the well-being and the needs of caregivers. I was a caregiver, and what I'm going to talk to you about today is really more about a point of view and a way of thinking about what we're doing in order to strengthen our relationships and strengthen our connections between the person with Parkinson's and the caregiver. But I'm going to start by telling you about something that happened in my house many years, several years at least, into our shared journey of caregiving and life with Parkinson's, which is that I came home from a doctor's appointment to tell my husband something kind of unnerving. And I said, well, the doctor says it's cancer. And, those are scary words. And that was about me. And he looked at me, and he was a loving and connected and really a great husband to me. But he looked at me kind of puzzled and uncertain, and he said, I know I should care, but I don't. Now that's kind of like, oh, you can imagine all of the different ways that I might have reacted to that. And what I'm going to be telling you about is sort of related to what that was like and why this is not a story about a marriage in trouble, but it is a story about Parkinson's. Like most caregivers, of course, despite that, I should care, but I don't. I didn't walk out and I didn't turn my back on my husband. And most of us caregivers, no matter how tough it gets, we don't turn our backs and walk away because our love, our commitment, our connection keeps us with our loved one who has Parkinson's, walking alongside them and helping them to live this difficult situation that they've been handed.
Terri, I'm so sorry to interrupt for a
Sure,
second.
please.
Apparently, if I want to just remind I apologize, I didn't remind our attendees. If you hit speaker view up at the top, hit speaker view, um, then you will see the speaker full screen and as she's speaking. So I just wanted to let you know that you can do that so you can see all Terri as she's speaking. And there are no slides up currently. Somebody was asking in the chat. So there are no slides up currently. It's just all Terri.
And usually I don't talk with slides. I was a professor for years, and so I've done more than my share of talking with slides because really what I want to do is talk to people and talk to you about our shared experience as caregivers. So as I'm saying, most of us don't step away. It's the unusual caregiver who steps away from this no matter the challenges. And I think it won't be a surprise to you that there are hard things about being a Parkinson's disease couple. And one thing that's kind of my claim to fame in the work that I've done with and for and about caregiving is that I try not to gloss over the realities. You'll hear a lot of sort of shiny promises and platitudes about the caregiving experience. And, the thing that's really very popular is somebody will say, well, take care of yourself as they turn their backs and go on about their lives. Well, my goal is always to make caregiving real and possible. And that means sometimes talking about things as they really are. So my focus really is on speaking to caregivers. There are, I know, people who are living with Parkinson's who are attending this meeting and listening. And what I want you to hear in this conversation, in this presentation, is that preserving and protecting your relationship is a joint process. You, together with your care partner, caregiver, can help to strengthen and protect and preserve your relationship, even though, as you're going to hear, Parkinson's is not always making that easy. So I'm not glossing over the realities, but it's not a story about just white knuckling through the difficulties of life with a serious condition like Parkinson's. So let me tell you a little bit about marrying a man who had Parkinson's disease and who told me that immediately when we met. We had the kind of relationship, and it was a late life marriage, where you look at each other and you say, why didn't I know you 30 years ago? And the answer is because we wouldn't have known what to do with each other. So we had the joy of a happy and really well-connected relationship, even though Parkinson's was in the picture from the very beginning. We shared a real love of music and books and travel. We shared his young daughter, who was 12 when I met him. We had happy episodes like when we built a little bridge in our garden together. And many of us have those kinds of memories of connection between us, between the person with Parkinson's and the loved one who is the care partner or caregiver. After a while, we had lived together in a house in Chicago, and then we decided to move to the East Coast. And cross-country move is a big deal for anybody, but its cross-country move was an even bigger deal for the two of us with the reality of Parkinson's in our life. And shortly after, so we're back. And what I was saying, I guess the last thing that you heard was that once we moved from the Midwest to the house I'm in now on the East Coast in Maine, things changed. Moving is hard for anybody. Cross-country moving is just not easy and not fun, really. But Parkinson's made things really different. And those changes led me to a key insight as I was learning to be a care partner, a caregiver, Parkinson's wife, one author has called it. And that was that our marriage vows, the traditional Western vows, love, honor in sickness and in health, are not enough. I've gotten a lot of flack from saying that, but what I have found is that by themselves, the promise to love, cherish, honor in sickness and in health still leaves us with a lot of room to try to learn, how do I do this? How do I do this well? And how do I do this in a way that preserves and strengthens our connection? And that's what I'm hoping I can help you to think through over this little time that we have together. Parkinson's caregiving can be hard. It can be lonely. It can be isolating, both for the person with Parkinson's and for the care partner or caregiver. And part of what makes it hard is that no one really tells you a crucial piece of information. And without that, you're sort of floundering to understand, like, what is this? What's going on? Why is it this way? And what you don't learn from the people who you might think are going to tell you is that Parkinson's disease, for the person with Parkinson's who's lucky enough to have a committed partner, a family member, a chosen family member, Parkinson's is a relational disease. Your doctor's not going to tell you that, in my experience. And I think most caregivers will tell me, who I work with, tell me, the doctor has not told you that this is a relational disease. When I married Peter, I married him, and as I mentioned, his young daughter. But there were more than the three of us in that household. What became apparent was that there were a pair of interlopers, intruders, sort of like having Bonnie and Clyde move into your house. One of those intruders I think of as a thief. And in chapter 3, I had to check which chapter it was of my book, Love, Dignity, and Parkinson's, I talk about Parkinson's the thief. I use the acronym STEALS, STEALS, to point to the fact that Parkinson's is a thief who walks into your house and steals sleep, steals thinking, steals elimination, steals affection, steals learning, steals sex and other impulses. And Parkinson's changes those things. And your doctor is not likely to have told you any of that. And chances are you've had those experiences too. Parkinson's makes sleep very difficult. Sleep difficulties, sleep disruptions like restless sleep, restless leg syndrome, the kind of REM sleep disorder that leads to active dreaming, and sometimes even acting out a dream so that my experience, one story I thought to tell you about was the time that I woke up and Peter was holding my arm. My husband was holding my arm so tightly and struggling with me. Scary, very scary to be awakened in the middle of the night like that. And I was able to use some of the things I'll talk to you about today to help him understand, this is me. I'm your wife. You're holding my arm, by describing to him what was going on without myself becoming agitated and distressed, even though I was, able to bring him back into consciousness. And then I later learned, as we talked about it, he was thinking that he was in a storm on the ocean. He was a sailor. He thought it was, he was in a storm in a sailboat, and that my arm was the tiller. And he was trying to save us. But it was scary. And if I hadn't understood some of the things that I had learned about Parkinson's, I could have reacted out of my own sense of fear and indignation. What are you doing to me? Parkinson's steals sleep. Parkinson's steals affection. It makes it hard sometimes for the person who loves you and that you a caregiver turn to for love and affection and warmth and connection, to express that. And as Peter told me, to feel it. I know I should care, but I don't, because he couldn't feel it, because Parkinson's has stolen his capacity to feel the emotion of compassion or care, of what you would think when your wife comes home and says, God, guess what? I have cancer. But what I remember was the day that I stood in front of a mirror in my house, looked at myself and realized there's nothing, he has nothing for you. Parkinson's had taken it all. And so he, who I loved to pieces, and who loved me, and I knew he loved me, but he no longer had the ability to bring that forth in the space between us. That was hard. If you've experienced that, then you know how hard that is when Parkinson steals affection. And you have to understand it ahead of time in order to not feel betrayed, isolated. And many times I talk to caregivers who have told me about thinking that their relationships, their marriages were on the rocks because Parkinson's had undermined their partner's capacity to be loving. And sometimes it even substitutes unpleasant behaviors of various sorts for the warmth that you'd been accustomed to. This is hard news, and no one told me this. No one told me this. I figured it out from a lot of reading and looking at the research and knowing who this man was, despite how he was treating me at times. I remember the last time that he hugged me. And it was so striking that I think it's worth describing, because I remember what it felt like for my husband we were standing outside the laundry room, a really glamorous place, right? And we were having a conversation. The topic is really unimportant, but it was a real moment of affection between us. I held on to that for a very, very long time, till today, because he couldn't do that again. It just wasn't there. And it wasn't for lack of loving me. And I think this is so important. It wasn't for lack of wanting to be in connection with me and to be cared for by me, but it was because Parkinson's had changed that capacity in his brain. And it gave me the capacity to not, well, the truth is I still cried. I wept over that reality. And yet it did not disrupt the connection between us. And this is what I want to share with you, that one of the biggest challenges for us as caregivers is being able to understand that this happens, and knowing how to maintain our balance, our equilibrium, our connection, despite these changes and the theft that Parkinson's creates. The other intruder, remember I said Bonnie and Clyde? One was the thief. The other was the liar. And the liar lies to the person with Parkinson's. And this is so tough, because often people with Parkinson's experience the person who once they had known as a loving partner as uncaring, disinterested. They can even experience a care partner as being aggressive or angry when what she is tired and uncertain. Whispering into the ear of the person with Parkinson's, don't trust them. You haven't changed, they've changed. And this isn't easy to talk to you about. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what am I saying? But I don't think I'm telling you things that you haven't experienced. So I'm hoping that you will bear with me to say that this does this to you, but it doesn't have to ruin your connection. It doesn't have to ruin things if you understand what's going on. So this deception, the liar and the thief, can break, unrecognized and unexplained, can break the emotional core, I think, of even the strongest relationship, even the strongest partnership or marriage. And so what I wanted to talk about is how I was able to, I think in part because of the specific kind of professional work that I had done before I became a caregiver, was able to stay in connection to my husband despite the presence of these interlopers. Now, typically, in the face of these kinds of struggles, and many caregivers have said this to me, well, in sickness and in health. This is what I rest on, is in sickness and in health. That marriage vow takes us a really long way. And if you've had a long marriage, you've had to rely on that, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. That's not news to you. But I propose that there's another pair of vows that we, as partners to someone with Parkinson's, people with Parkinson's in partnership with a person who's caring for us, can make new vows, a pair of explicit decisions that can, I believe, really help to preserve your relationship, preserve your connection with each other, and give you the emotional strength to go the distance well. Maybe you do this by yourselves with each other. Maybe you do it with a counselor or a therapist or with a clergy person, um, a coach, but that you do some things that are quite explicit. And the more you can be explicit about these two things, I think the more you can protect your relationship. The first is that I encourage Parkinson's couples early on to have a conversation in which the caring partner asks this question of the person with Parkinson's: may I be your caregiver? Do you give me permission to care for you? And expanding it a little bit more, may I have your permission to care for you, even if some of the things I ask you to do don't make a lot of sense to you? May I have your permission to be your caregiver? Because it is hard to accept care. You know, think about something really simple. You're in the grocery store and a bag tears. I've had that happen to me. And some person comes along and says, oh, here, let me help you. And you want, on the one hand, to say thank you, because I really needed that help because I've got tomatoes rolling down the street. But you're also thinking, oh my God, I feel so stupid. I feel embarrassed. And why does this person have to step out of their day? You understand that experience where you feel embarrassed and uncomfortable to ask for help? It is hard to ask for help. And so giving permission to care for you. People with Parkinson's, give your care partner permission to care for you. And I think that that helps to create a new kind of space in which the two of you can operate, a space between you, which is the permission to care. If we were in a live audience, I'd ask you, does this make sense? And I'm hoping that it does. So that's one of the pair of new vows. I give you permission, or new promises. I give you permission to care for me. I ask your permission to care for me. But the other is to ask the person, tell the person with Parkinson's that you trust that even when Parkinson's intrudes between you, I promise to see and trust that I see the difference between the symptoms that are happening to you and the person that I know and love. Which gave me what it took to be able to not have the fact that this man is, pulling at my arm and threatening to, not intending to break it, but risking breaking my arm, and not let it touch my heart. I often say when I'm working as a coach with caregivers that the more that you cannot let the symptoms touch your heart, I think the more you preserve and sustain your relationship. I'm not saying that this is easy. It isn't easy, but it is a path that I believe will help you to stay in connection between you. When you are using these two things correctly, I think that they will help to sustain and maintain your relationship. I think it's important to talk about what I mean by used correctly. And I'm going to give you a couple of example stories from my own experience and from other caregivers that I've worked with. One is from my husband, who, among other things, knew that I had worked in the world of domestic violence for a very long time. And yet the day came when something, and I don't remember what it was, something frustrated him. I can tell you where exactly we were in our house and exactly what happened, but I don't even remember what it was. It might have been something as simple as saying dinner was going to be late, or it might have been something as simple as saying, no, I didn't wash your green socks. I don't know. It was that trivial. But what I remember is that as he became more and more angry and frustrated and frightened, he raised his hand as if to hit me. No, I didn't want that. But listen, not only did I not want that, I knew that he didn't want that. And so I was able to use what I knew about how to help someone to hold his arm firmly without any uncertainty that it was important to keep him from hurting me. And then to look at him and say, I spoke his name 1, 2, 3 times, not angry, not agitated, just instructively, and got his attention. Are you the kind of man who hits his wife? Now, what's important is that the way that I spoke was not the beginning of an argument. It was not resisting. It was not tearful. It was instructive. Are you the kind of man who hits his wife? And I think there had to have been some strength behind my voice because it was a heightened situation. But because I was asking a question and that I knew how he felt about those kinds of situations, it was able to reach the man inside the symptoms. I hope that makes sense. To learn to reach the person inside the symptoms allows you to sustain your connection. And I've helped him to calm down. I said, well, don't. What has scared you? What has worried you? I used words that came from a woman called Teepa Snow, who is just a gifted communicator and works with people who have brain diseases. And one of the things that she teaches is to say, I'm sorry I made you angry. I'm sorry I frightened you. I'm sorry I didn't do it the way you wanted. And again, not pleading, not in some way defending yourself, just communicating to a person whose brain has been compromised. I'm sorry. Because it lets them know that you acknowledge, that you recognize, that you understand that something isn't feeling right and that you are on their side. You know, this is hard stuff. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I think it's really effective to help you sustain your connection. So are you the kind of man who hits his wife? Was a reconnecting moment for us and kept us safe. Kept him safe, kept me safe, kept him safe from hurting me, kept me safe from being hurt, and kept our marriage safe from being disrupted. Another example, one that I hear about a lot, is that the lies that the Parkinson's liar tells a person with Parkinson's can include make things that make them feel that the person who's caring for them, who is their partner, their beloved partner, is cheating on them. Accusations of infidelity come up. You're hanging out with Joe the butcher down the road. You know, the lady in the woman in the restaurant who's smiling because she wants a better tip is flirting with you. And those accusations are searing. It's got to be horrible to be the person with Parkinson's who feels that the person you thought loved you is no longer caring for you and is being unfaithful. It's horrible. I mean, there's no other words for how that feels. And to be accused of infidelity, especially when you have been a committed and connected and busy caregiver, and to be told, well, I know you're cheating on me, just feels so awful. And so many people have talked to me about how harmed they feel by that. I encourage caregivers in that tough situation to it's sort of following the Teepa Snow idea before, I'm sorry that you feel that way. No wonder you're upset. Anybody who thought that their partner was cheating on them would feel that upset. But because I'm not cheating on you, we can figure this out. You hear how that's different? Not easy, but it's different because you are connecting through sort of weaving, does this make sense? Weaving your way through the symptoms to connect with the person that you've been with. Many times people have been together 30, 40, 50 years when Parkinson's, the pair, the liar and the thief creep in and try to undermine things. But if you can you and the caregivers, a lot of times this is on you, to reconnect with the person inside the symptoms. I also believe that the earlier you do this, the better. The earlier you establish the ability to say, we are still us, and we will help each other together. Of course, you'd be unhappy. I understand that. No, I'm not surprised that you're so upset, but I'm not. One more example is, I mean, it's a broad word. They use it a lot, boundaries, setting boundaries. And the idea is not about, I mean, sometimes people think setting boundaries is learning to say, stern no, don't do that. Setting boundaries is about knowing what you cannot do and communicating it right away, calmly, lovingly, and consistently. And that I use the example, it's kind of an extreme example, but it's one that kind of makes the point. I think it's maybe chapter 5 in the book, that if your person with Parkinson's asked you to pick up the refrigerator and move it across the kitchen, could you do it? I couldn't. None of us could really. And because it's such a, I mean, I use this as an absurd example because refrigerator, you can't lift the refrigerator. So if your partner said to you, you need to lift the refrigerator, I want you to pick up the refrigerator and move it. You could, with all the love in the world, say, well, I hear that you want me to. You wish that I could, but there's no way I can do that. What else can we do? How you accept the communication. You don't battle with it. And, lifting the refrigerator is, straightforward. But suppose your person says, I don't like what you made for dinner. I want something else. It's completely reasonable to say, I understand that you'd rather have something other than what I made, but I can't cook another dinner tonight. And the subtext, which you may or may not say, is because I'm tired, because I hate cooking, because whatever, because I don't want to, is a perfectly good reason, right? But to say, of course you want another dinner. This isn't really suiting to you, but that's not something I can do right now. What can we do instead? Do you see how that makes it the two of you solving this problem instead of, why do you always want me to cook another dinner? And, you don't respect, you can see how that could, I mean, anybody who's been married knows how that can blow up into, a crazy argument. But you also can avoid that by letting it be as it is and giving an answer that is clear about your own boundaries. I only cook once a night and I'm done. So what else can we do? Which means you're together you're on each other's sides that way. And that helps to preserve your relationship as well. Having boundaries is important. Hearing my husband say, I know I should care, but I don't, took me aback because I was like, stirred up myself about this news. But I was able, I don't remember exactly what I said to him now, but some version of, well, we'll work on this together and we will solve it together. And it's okay. If you don't care right now, it's all right. This is what we're going to do. I began to reach past this kind of disturbing symptom, I don't care, you got cancer, and reconnect with him. I don't want to say that this is something that is simple. I mean, I've said that already 19 times today, but this is a lot of what I try to support caregivers to do in my book and other stuff, is to help you find the way to preserve your relationship, because your relationship is a treasure that you can use to get through this tough thing that's happened to you as a couple. One of you having Parkinson's and one of you having a partner with Parkinson's. Now, I was really lucky. I also was able to say to my husband, from what they told me, I believe in 3 months this will all blow past. And sure enough, they did the surgery they needed to do, and I was 100% healthy, and I've been free of this cancer for 7 years, and the doctor says I can call myself cured. So that's like, an enormous relief. But even if I had still been ill, I still could have not let the Parkinson's liar undermine the connection that we needed in order to get us through this. It's a challenge for you as a caregiver or a care partner, but I hope that it's something that you can do. So what I can tell you is that our loving relationship was strained by the ravages of Parkinson's disease. Many of our relationships are. It wasn't always easy, but our marriage was always good. Even at the toughest times, even when symptoms and bathroom stuff and all of that happened, the things that I had learned in all of my work in trauma, supporting people who were living with trauma and supporting staff who worked with them, helped me to understand that staying in connection to the person in front of you is the key to making so much of this go better. My husband passed in my arms. It was personal and intimate. And while it may sound strange to say this, it was good. And I can say that of our whole relationship. It wasn't always easy, but it was always good. So what I hope for you, excuse me, what I hope for you is that you will find your way to maintain and sustain and restore the connection and the communication between you. That finding a way to share permission, share trust, so that you too can always say, even if it's not always easy, it's always good. So that's what I wanted to bring to you. And I wanted to leave room for questions and conversation because this is, from what I know, I never heard any of these points from the doctors who should have been there to help me understand how to care for my husband. I didn't hear any of this from the therapists who should have been there to help me care for my husband. And someone should have known this. So Trish, with that, what I hope we can do is open the floor for some questions and comments and see, what kinds of questions people have. And then to talk a little bit about, just to share one other thing that I wanted people to know about before we close.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much for that personal and heartwarming information and useful information. And what I want to do is, if you have questions for Terri, a couple ways you can do that. You can either type them in the chat, and I'd be happy to read them if you're on the shyer side, or if you would like to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and unmute and start speaking. Or if you want to raise your hand, put your camera on and raise your hand. I'll try to look around to see that I have everyone there. So if anyone has any questions for Terri.
And Trish, one thing I discovered, I don't know that Zoom always does this, but if you raise your hand, Zoom will put up a little icon that says that a person has raised their hand.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it always does that. And a
Okay.
lot of our participants have their cameras off. Erwin, did you have a question? It looked like you were reaching forward towards your computer. You don't have, I'm not putting you on the spot and you're muted. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. I unmuted you. Did you have a question?
Not right now. My wife was just called to the door because the doorbell rang. I think it's our gardener or something.
Okay, okay. I thought you were
But
trying to
we
get
were really moved by this discussion this morning. It's very, very helpful for us.
Thank you. Thank you. So I
sorry.
Oh God, I have a question. So one question I have is, where would you go from here? What would the next step be for our participants if they want more of information?
Well, I mean, I think, there's always the professionals, the therapists and so forth, although I have found that therapists have not necessarily been trained in this aspect of supporting someone whose partner has Parkinson's. Couples therapy can sometimes be helpful, but sometimes couples therapy also sort of slides by because it is not familiar and I don't think it's really taught very much in schools. I offer some things for my book is certainly a place that anyone can start. Ask your local library to get it if you're not able to buy it for yourself or don't want to buy it for yourself. And I wrote it starting shortly after my husband died because I realized the stuff that I had learned, the things that I had figured out for myself, and because I spent a lot of time in online Parkinson support groups, learning from other caregivers, I thought, let me write this down because other caregivers may find some of it useful. So that's one place is my book, which is called Love, Dignity, and Parkinson's. You can find it online or, the normal places to get books. And I also have a couple of online offerings that are available for people. And I'll tell people about those a little bit more. People can also join my email list, which is I call it Weekly Plus. So I always send a weekly email, like a sort of Dear Abby Q&A with questions that come from my subscribers and other questions that are important about life with Parkinson's disease and as a caregiver. But also I have other things that come up as on my email list, and people are able to join that, and then to join a Facebook group where caregivers talk to each other, and a lot of good stuff happens in that group.
Wonderful. Wonderful. The group sharing, group activity, group encounters often do open up new questions and things come up. So thank you for that. We do have a question in the chat. Parkinson's affects each person differently. How often do you feel this occurs? The liar and the thief, for example.
Well, I can't say that both of them happen in all the time, but I would say that the thief happens pretty commonly, not all at once, and not every one of those phenomena will happen for any one person, but those are common phenomena in later Parkinson's disease, and they come and go. They look different in every situation. And even if those aren't, some of the other things that I talk about with the acronym STEELS can affect. I think the most important thing, rather than any specific symptom, is just for people to be told Parkinson's is more than shaky muscles, sticky feet, difficulty with balance, falling, and those kinds of motor symptoms that are so familiar. Those have been talked about since, what was it, the 19th century, when James Parkinson's first labeled this disorder, and since like the 13th century when it was first described in India. But very few people have talked about, until very recently, have talked about the fact that these non-motor symptoms, which vary broadly, and depending on your personality, the nature of your relationship, the strains and stresses and other things in your life, look really different for each individual person. So don't go looking for these things. I mean, if they're there, they will find you soon enough. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when non-physical symptoms show up. And ask your doctor, ask the resources, check in my book, join an online group. Mine is not the only one. And ask, is this a common phenomenon with Parkinson's disease? Is this doing it to me? And I think for a person with Parkinson's to be told, this is something that's happening in your brain and this is not your fault, must be a relief. Does that
Great.
answer the question, you think, Trish?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. We do have another question, and I got a question also on my phone, and then I see that Erin's wife has her hand up, so we'll get to everyone. One question is, what is the email addresses to receive your weekly emails? I believe we're going to be posting that on the slide in a few minutes, so we'll post that up for you. And then I think we'll hold the question on the phone, and then we'll go to, I'm going to unmute you, Erwin, and the lady there with you.
Lana.
Lana. Hi, Lonnie. Lana. So go ahead and ask your question.
We've been married 64 years, so we know each other pretty well. But what I have found with the Parkinson's is that my husband has become more stubborn. He has, with Parkinson's comes some dementia. And that's something that has to be addressed too. And that perhaps is more frustrating to me than the Parkinson's. So I don't know what to do.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you asked that question, because probably no one has really talked to you about the fact that the changes in thinking and language and behavior are part of Parkinson's, and they require learning how to do that in a way that helps you stay connected. Excuse me. I think the first thing is to say what many people say in online groups, which is that it's not him, it's the disease. But that's not a sufficient answer. The first thing is to not take personally. Well, let me start with the idea of stubbornness first, because stubborn, which I guess means that you ask them to do something that at another time they might have done easily, to concede a point that they might have conceded more easily, and that they don't anymore. Parkinson's makes it hard to think. Parkinson's makes it hard to plan and carry out even sometimes very simple things. An example that I've used is you ask your person with Parkinson's, your partner, would you please feed the dog? and then they don't. And then, like, please feed the dog. I asked you every day. That's the only thing I ask you to do. And can you see how that can sort of become a sort of an explosion point? But from the point of view of a person whose brain has been affected by this what I sometimes just call rotten disease, and I guess I'm not very shy about talking about it. Feed the dog becomes, first of all, okay, is this a request, a description, a command? What are these words coming in? There may be even some processing that makes it hard to really make those words make sense. Okay, feed the dog. The memory of a dog from 25 years ago may come to mind. And the task sort of gets blurry. Feed the dog. How do I do that? Food, refrigerator, cupboard, dog food. That requires thinking, memory, planning, execution, carrying it out. So you do that. And you maybe can find your way through that. And then there's, okay, now I need a place to put the dog food. But where is that? Is the bowl clean? Where is it? Where do I put it? All of the many steps that go between honey feed the dog and the dog happily crunching away involve a kind of mental processing that can be compromised by Parkinson's. Now, you've asked the person to feed the dog and you just want the dog, oh, please don't make me do one more job. But it becomes something that is so complex. It can, not in every case. You understand, I'm not saying every single person, every single time. When this is happening, and the brain process is just like creating what somebody else I know, somebody in their 20s, calls brain fog. It's just this brain is not doing what I'm asking it to do. And then you've got the embarrassment and the sense of frustration and the sense of, do I have to really admit that I don't really know how to do this? And then that embarrassment also gets in the way. And it becomes a whole complicated thing between the request and the request being carried out. So.
Thank you very much for that.
And I can go on with more detail in talking to an individual person, but do you see how what I'm talking about is that stubborn is not just, I'm not doing it because I don't want to. It's much more complicated than that.
Okay, thank you so much. Another question is, that came over via text to me, it's not on the chat. Can you give some ideas of ways to deal with apathy?
Yes. I mean, I can tell you how I think about it. I mean, apathy is, sometimes, these words that come from the biology people and the psychologists and so forth don't really capture the experience in life. Apathy is my ability to feel an interest in something, right? To find the physical wherewithal to get up and act on it, to sustain the memory that what I'm thinking about is that I want to watch the car. The whole thing becomes so overwhelming that the person is likely to simply hit the brakes and not do something at all. I remember a summer day, looking out my window, I can see the spot where my husband would sit often in a chair when the weather's warm. And I was jumping up and down, trying, not literally yet, but, trying to do something interesting because he was just sitting there and staring. And he had been sitting there and staring. And he didn't want to read a book, and he didn't want to talk to me, and he didn't want to listen to music. He was just sitting. And because he was like an insightful kind of man, he was able to say to me at some point, I know I'm just sitting and staring, but it's okay. It's okay. And I could just feel myself going, oh, look at me, jumping up and down, trying to make him do something that his brain and body and energy and interest and memory and all of that were just not letting him do, and trying to make him be some way that he just couldn't be. He was not uncomfortable. So was that apathy? Yeah, I guess. Is it not caring about something that they used to care about? You used to always make the house, care that the bed was made nicely, and now you don't. No, making a bed can be very complex. If your hands don't cooperate, your feet don't cooperate, and you can't really remember how to get all those lines straight in the patterns, it's easier to just say, it's not that important, I'm not going to make the bed. Is that apathy, or is that all that stuff coming together in a way that means that it just doesn't happen? So How do you deal with it? I think you first have to accept that if Parkinson's has compromised a person's ability to find the energy and the motivation and the focus and the memory to do something, if it's gone or it's compromised, it just is. The truth is that we caregivers do a lot more of the adapting in the world, while the person with Parkinson's has to adapt to all the changes that are happening in their own brains and bodies. And you know how you feel when I've got bandages on my fingers because I made a mistake in the kitchen, and my fingers hurt, and I can't do things with my hands that I expect myself to do, and it's frustrating, and it's a little, embarrassing. I want to hide my hands from you, and so that happens for a person with Parkinson's. They have to live with all these changes inside their brain and body, and we caregivers have to live with all of these changes between us and in the space of our homes. The more that you can make that a partnership, I think, the easier your lives will be.
Thank you. That was excellent. We think we have time for just this one last question, and then we'll put up your last slide and let you share the opportunity you have for everyone today. And the question is, how much of the liar and thief information do you recommend sharing with family, like children and people like that?
Parts of it. Parts of it. I mean, it depends. If you're talking about an adult child, I actually have a couple of resources that are just for sharing with adult family members to help them understand that. With teenagers, that's tougher. I'll give you an example of something. This is a conversation I had online with somebody 15 years ago. And the partner, the father in this family, was being really pretty indifferent, is the kindest thing I can say about how he was treating his 14, 15-year-old daughter. And people were advising her to tell this child, oh, he loves you anyway, he just can't show it. And that was like, no, I don't think that's the right answer. But I think the right answer is Parkinson's is changing how he's treating you. And so we can't really tell whether he loves you or not. But we can't fix it. And what can we do? I will always be here for you in this way, in this way, in this way. And you can protect the child without criticizing the person with Parkinson's, but being straight with them. Parkinson's is changing their ability to think. Parkinson's is changing how they can feel their love for you. You can say that to a 4-year-old. Why doesn't Pop smile at me and hug me anymore? Oh, it must disappoint you so much. Remember how much fun you used to have with Pop on the swings? Yeah, and he's got this disease that changes his brain so he can't remember that he loves you. You can say that to a 4-year-old. And I think it's accurate. I think it's loving. And I think it helps the child to understand that he's still Pop, and we still want to be as loving and kind to him as we know how to be. But this thing has kind of stolen away his ability to love us, and it breaks our hearts. Your version of that could be said to a 4-year-old. And I think you have to gauge, if you're the other grown-up or another grown-up in that youngster's life, you have to gauge what is the information that they're really, the thing they're really trying to sort out, and not try to give them the whole world of information. But why is he always so stubborn? Well, thinking and planning and understanding is so tough for him now that it does seem like he never wants to do anything you want him to do. And then, how can I help you? You say to the teen, what can we do instead? Because dad, grandpa, whatever, mom is not able to be the mom that we love and recognize. And how can we do that in a way that doesn't make her feel terrible, but also takes care of you too?
Great. What a thoughtful and heartwarming answer. That was excellent. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, we're going to hold the rest of the questions. I'm going to go ahead and share the next slide that I think you had wanted us to share, and I'll let you speak to that, Terri.
Okay, thank you, Trish. I'd love to hear from people, and I hope that you will join my mailing list. And if you scan the QR code, that sort of little weird pattern on the left of your screen, or go to the link at the right, talk.ac/Terri Pease PhD, and give them the code GHBO. Either of those will get you to a little app, a little online thingy that asks you some questions about the talk, because it helps me to get feedback from you. What was useful? What would you like to have heard more of? What didn't make any sense? And also, you can give me your email, and that will allow me to reach out to you, help you join my list, make sure that you get information, and you'll get like a couple of free. Oh, and you also, when you go through this little questionnaire, you will get a free download of a document that I think may be helpful to you as, connecting and learning how I can be helpful to you as a Parkinson's couple and as a Parkinson's caregiver. So this thing, Talkadot, Trish, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can make it available to people, because it always takes me forever to figure out how to make a QR code work.
Yes, we can take just this one slide and post it separately for people.
Oh, that would be terrific if you could do that. And that way you'll get information about both my free resources and then my course and other things. And this is the other thing I want to tell you about. I do have some paid programs. The one that I've been working on for more than a year that I've just launched this week is something that I've called Parkinson's Disease Caregiving 101, Patience, Peace, and Practicality. And on the next slide, you'll see that one of the things that I wanted to do, because I was really happy to have this opportunity to talk to all of you, is to give you the cost of that program 50% off for this weekend for people who've attended. The course, Parkinson's Disease Caregiving 101, Patience, Peace, and Practicality, it's a mouthful, is a 6-module, 13-week program of videos with some optional one-on-one coaching or optional group coaching to help, especially people who are in the earlier half of caregiving, get their feet on the ground, get their head straight about how do I do this. It's got information that, I worked really hard to make it meet the needs of the caregivers that I've talked to and to do the things that I wished I'd had. So you can also scan this as a way of getting to that. If you don't find it and you after we've closed and you realize you want to, it's easy to reach my email, which is terripease@gmail.com. Terri Pease, just my name, terripease@gmail.com. And just mention what you're looking for. And I have one person who helps me with stuff like this. And together we will make sure that we reach out to you and make sure that we give you an answer that I hope will help you to feel more on top of the situation that you're living with. And I just really thank you for being here and for giving me a chance to share with you what I think about and what I've learned in all of this, and in the hopes that it helps make Parkinson's caregiving less isolating, less lonely, and just plain easier.
And there's Terri's email on that slide as well, if you missed it. So
actually, that's my website.
Oh, that's your website. I'm
That's
sorry.
fine. Yeah, that's it. But if you go to my
your
website, you'll see Grab Your Lifeline. And if you click Grab Your Lifeline on the front page of my website, you'll get a download of something that I call First Steps when your loved one is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And that will be another way to get on my mailing list and begin to get my weekly plus email series.
Great, great. Well, on behalf of all of the attendees today and those that are going to be watching this video in the future, and on behalf of all of Pet4U board members and volunteers and instructors, we just want to say thank you for your time and your compassion that you have for this population and the caregivers, and your understanding, because I think our caregivers are often not all the attention goes to the person with Parkinson's. So it's nice to have this opportunity to spend a little time, focus more on the caregiving aspect. And it's great for those living with Parkinson's to hear that perspective as well. So we just want to thank you very much, Terri, and thank you all for attending. It takes a week or two, but we'll get this up on the website and archived for you. So thank you so much and have a great day.
For everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.